There's nothing quite like the sheer terror of the American upper middle class about what college their kids will be able to attend. In well-off suburbs, the race for the Ivies begins the moment a child is conceived. Got to get them in the right playgroup that feeds into the right preschool that leads to the right private school. Got to get them in fencing or tennis from age like 2. Pony up thousands for test prep from the jump to make sure they can get through any possible entrance exams. In the Varsity Blues scandal, of course, a bunch of people who were wealthy, but not like Bezos wealthy, were even willing to commit crimes to get their offspring into the right prestigious schools. Well, new data reveals just how the super rich game this whole system for their benefit and why the merely well-off may have so much anxiety about keeping their kids among the elite. According to the New York Times write-up of a groundbreaking study, in elite college admissions, being very rich is its own qualification. Now, this study looked at admissions for 12 different elite private universities, including the Ivies, and found that even if you controlled for test scores and for academic rigor, the children of the 0.1% were more than twice as likely to get into the school as your average applicant. Or, as Matt Iglesias put it on Twitter, new source of intra-elite conflict and status anxiety just dropped. Just take a look at that chart that's up on the screen. If you are low income, you actually have a somewhat higher than average likelihood of getting in. Then there is a big drop off from about the 60th income percentile to the 99th percentile, where everyone from the upper middle class to the wealthy, but not super wealthy, have a lower chance of getting in than the average. The line then jumps over the average line at around the 99th percentile, top 1%. Then it just skyrockets from there to the top of the charts. So the super rich are getting super privileged into our nation's top schools, and those schools, of course, are a direct pipeline into the national elite. Also revealing was exactly how the super rich got their big leg up. The benefit basically came from 3 areas, according to this study: legacy admissions, athletics, and private school privilege. The biggest impact appears to have been from legacy admissions. The very richest were 8 times more likely than the average applicant to get into a school if they had a parent who had also attended that school. So being born into an Ivy League family supercharges the chances of already wealthy kids. But the other categories of benefit are also pretty revealing. Wealthy students at elite schools are much more likely to be recruited athletes than middle class or poor kids. Now, why is that? Because many of the sports popular at the Ivies, things like rowing and fencing, they're expensive sports that basically only rich kids actually do. But even more mainstream sports have had a large and escalating cost associated with them, as parents go to great lengths to get their kids in the right club or travel teams, attend faraway competitions, and supply them with all of the best gear. Another place where rich kids pulled ahead of the pack was in all of the non-academic metrics that admissions counselors use. What were your extracurriculars? What kind of recommendations did you get? Remember those letters you had to get? Did your guidance counselor literally call up the school and advocate for you? I genuinely did not even know that last one was a thing, but apparently at a lot of the Ivy League feeder schools, guidance counselors have existing relationships with admissions officers, and they will actually work the phones to try to get their favorite kids in. This pays big dividends. Just look at this chart. Rich kids were actually not all that different from everyone else on their academic ratings, grades, course rigor, SAT scores. But their guidance counselor ratings, their teacher ratings, other non-academic ratings go sky high at the top end of the wealth spectrum. This suggests a major advantage to rich kids attending elite private schools. It also suggests a less than benevolent reason why some parents are pushing and some schools are moving towards getting rid of the SAT. Standardized tests and grades are far from perfect, but they're at least a somewhat objective measure. When you start to get into these squishier variables, schools have been caught using them to blatantly discriminate against Asians and now to blatantly discriminate in favor of the rich. Basically, the less objective the criteria is, the more the rich have free rein to work the system in their favor, something many schools are dedicated to because rich kids with rich parents means fat donation checks. This paper also found that in terms of class preferences, really didn't matter what race you were. No matter whether you were Black, white, Asian, or Latino, if mommy and daddy were in the super elite, you were more likely to have your ticket punched as well. This study reveals one aspect of why classes become increasingly rigid in America, such that in spite of our American dream mythology, kids in the U.S. are actually less likely to escape their class status at birth than kids in many European nations. Why our middle class is also smaller than many of those same nations. These secret protection rackets that keep the rich rich and make it tougher for everyone else, that funnel the Nepo babies into the most powerful echelons of elites so that they can then preserve those very protection rackets that got them there in the first place. And keep in mind, because this analysis doesn't even consider the advantages from things like private tutors and the like, it undoubtedly understates the leg up that the rich ultimately get. Bottom line, as we end race-based affirmative action, there is no excuse for maintaining a blatant system of affirmative action for the rich. And Sagar,
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them, going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.